Hello everyone, I'm going to be showing you our FilSwan client tool. Our FilSwan client tool provides many functions such as encrypting and decrypting files, generating CAR files, whether with Lotus or not, generating metadata and saving it to a metadata CSV file, proposing deals and generating a final CSV, which contains additional information for the provider to import deals, and finally, synchronizing tasks on the FilSwan platform. Before we get started, there are several basic concepts that need to be explained first. Our FilSwan client tool is designed for clients who want to send offline deals. The size of an offline deal can be up to 32 gigabytes. We suggest creating a CSV file. Here's an example. In the FilSwan project, a task can contain up to 100 offline deals. There are two types of tasks, a public task and a private task. A public task is a deal set for open bidding. After a storage provider wins the bid, the task owner needs to send the task with the files to the storage provider winner. A private task is used to send deals to a specific provider. Before you get started using the FilSwan client tool, some installation is necessary. First, run the apt-get upgrade command to download the package file lists from the repositories and update them. Then run the apt-get upgrade command to fetch new versions of the packages existing on the machine. Next, install Git and Git clone project from our GitHub repo, FilSwan/FilSwan client. While it's finishing, enter the FilSwan client folder. Run the sh-install.sh command to install a virtual environment and then activate it. Now the FilSwan client tool is all set. For safety reasons, you can encrypt and decrypt your files. This step is not obligatory, but if needed, I'll take you through this process step by step. Before encrypting or decrypting the files, you'll need to generate a file that contains the password you have picked. This file will be kept in the FilSwan client folder. Whether you are encrypting or decrypting a file, the FilSwan client is very simple. You need to define the input file and the output file. And lastly, attach the password file. In my case, I created a test folder for the original files, an encryption folder for encrypted files, and a decryption folder for decrypted files. To encrypt, I input the original file in the test folder, output it to the encryption folder, and named it swantask.enc. To decrypt, I input the swantask.enc file in the encryption folder and output it to the decryption folder and named it swantask.zip. Next, we can officially start the process of sending deals offline by generating CAR files. You could do this with or without Lotus. First, I'll show you the option with Lotus. Enter FilSwan client folder, then paste the command and define the input and output directories. Note here the input and output directories should only be in the absolute path format. The output directory can also be specified in the config file. In my case, I created a CAR folder for CAR files. The other option is without Lotus. Make sure Go is available before starting. Enter the FilSwan client folder, then paste the command and define the input and output directories. However, the input and output directories here do not necessarily have to be in the absolute format. Meanwhile, a manifest CSV file will be generated in the same output directory. In my case, I created a Go CAR folder for the CAR files. After the CAR files are generated, the next step is to upload it to a web server or an IPFS server in order for providers to download your CAR files. To upload to a web server, you will need to upload the files manually. Otherwise, you can upload the files to a local IPFS server by using FilSwan client. You need to make sure you are running an IPFS server locally. If you choose to use this method, remember to edit your IPFS gateway in the config file. Now that everything is ready, we can start the most important part, sending out the deals. You will have two options here. You can either create a private task if you already have a desired provider in mind, or create a public task if you want it open for bidding. First, we need to edit the config file. In the main section, the IP key and access token are available on the FilSwan website. This part can be ignored if offline mode is activated in the sender section. Also, you need to choose your storage server type here. Depending on which server you will be using, choose either the web server or IPFS server. In the sender section, you need to modify multiple parameters such as output directory, public deal, wallet, max price, and etc. Then save those changes. Finally, run the task command to send out the deal. In this case, I sent a deal directly to a provider, which means I have created a private task. This tool will give you a random task name for private tasks. Now, when logging into my account, we can see the first task on top is the one I just sent on the task deal page. On this page, you can easily find the deal CID, the payload CID, deal status, and etc. Now I will show you an example of a public task. First, edit the config file by setting it to a public deal. For me, nothing else needs to be changed. Now run the task command to create a task. If you want, you can make a task name during this step. While the task is being created, a meta CSV file is being created at the same time. It contains more content for creating the task proposal in the next step. Let's go check my account. We can see the first task on top is the public task I just created. There's neither a provider ID nor a deal CID. The task is also listed on the Browse Task page for providers to bid on. Once you have found a suitable provider, you can run the deal command to send out the deal to the selected provider. Let's go back to the task deal page. Both the provider ID and deal CID have now been filled. Thank you for watching.